Hey everyone, I am Alfarius, and if you're watching this, you're Alfarius too. Today's video is my first requested tutorial. I'll be demonstrating on how I go about painting my Alpha Legion power armor. Before we begin, we need to talk a bit about the 20th Legion themselves. They are the masters of deception, infiltration, sabotage, insurgency, covert and even false flag operations. So you may be wondering, are they loyalists? Are they traitors? And is their armor purple, blue, or green? The answer is yes. Here is your paint list. This is by no means a set paint list. This technique can be done with any brand of paint with similar shades and colors. I've chosen to use Citadel paints as it is what I am accustomed to. Also, a warning. This power armor technique is very time consuming, as it requires many thinned layers and glazing techniques. Today I'll be working on this 5-man squad that I'll be using for kill team games. So let's begin. Start your model off with a solid Incubi Darkness base coat. Make sure not to make it too thick as to not clog up any details. It is better to do multiple thin down coats to establish a strong base color rather than one thick coat. Before I continued, I had done the base coats on other parts of the model, like the trim, bolt gun, and I had worked on the bases as well. Next, we'll mix a 50-50 combination of Incubi Darkness mixed with Sotek Green. Do a very overall highlight with this color, but stay away from the recesses. If you're not using a wet palette, don't mix up too much of this as you don't want to waste any paint. After that, we hit our Legionnaires with a shade of Druchii Violet. This is to give our shadows a rich and saturated purple color. Once left to dry completely, we go back to the 50-50 mix of Incubi Darkness and Sotek Green. But this time, we're doing a less general highlight than before. I am choosing to do a Zenthiol highlight with this as I am trying to emulate an iridescent paint. When applying this first highlight and all the subsequent highlight layers, we will need to try to feather the paint into the color below it. Make sure that with these layer paints that you are thinning them appropriately so that when we blend them, we're able to build up a nice gradient. It isn't the easiest thing to do, nor the easiest thing to articulate, but it's something we're going to have to practice. One thing I end up doing often is I apply about half of what I was originally going to highlight with, then quickly clean and dry off the brush before going back to it, and working to spread and kind of thin the paint across where I need it to blend in a kind of pseudo glazing technique. Alternatively, you could thin down these highlight colors more and slowly build up the gradient by applying many thin down glazes. The next step is to go with straight Sotek Green. It's called Sotek Green, but it's more closer to a cyan color. Here I'll show you another example of how I go about blending the highlight colors. Here's them all highlighted with Sotek Green. Now we mix 50-50% Sotek Green and Cabalite Green. This is where the color will start to shift towards green. This step doesn't really show up on the camera that well, but if you're following along with this step, you will definitely see it. Again, like before, highlight less of their area and more towards the zenith of the model. By now you can begin to see the pattern. We do our next highlight as straight Cabalite Green to make it a bit more visible. After that, we do a 50-50 mix of Kabyle Light Green and Moon Green, which is our second brightest green. I usually stop the gradient about here. The final step I do is a sharp edge highlight with Moot Green to give the models a lot more pop. I find it looks best if you can find an edge that has a part blended from our purple all the way to our green. The contrast between the colors will give your Legionnaires a lot more visual interest. With this final edge highlight, you'll want to pick out any edges, rivets, or anything that'll give the model a lot more detail. And there you have it! Some great looking chaotic Alpha Legion ready to crush the enemies of the Emperor. Allegedly. Feel free to adjust any part of this tutorial to suit your needs and style. You can probably consolidate some of these steps if you don't want to spend all your time working on that gradient. Also, you could probably do all this faster and get smoother results with an airbrush. This is just my way of going about it. Thanks for watching. I hope you've learned something. If you've enjoyed it and you'd like to see more content, hit that subscribe button and shoot me a message for future tips and tutorials you'd like to see. Happy painting!